says, what's the remedy?
The remedy is decolonization, but nobody's talking that, are they? See, the race argument is a diversion. See, it's like what needs to be done is never discussed. Why? It's considered radical. You know, it's sort of like, how many aspirins do you take when you have cancer? None. Duh. The remedy is decolonization.
The process of decolonization
is nationalization all over the planet. This is why they don't talk national. They talk race to divert you from treaties and constitutions. That's why we're in the mess we're in politically. This is what has given them the foundation of operations, is that we've been operating on de facto paradigms, false history, de facto color of law operations, and then looking for something good to come out of it, and then trying to figure out how do we fix this thing. You fix it by enforcing the law and discarding color of law, which has been operational here. This is what's been going on.
Excuse me. If a group of people can organize themselves and take over a major section of a major city like Seattle, Washington,
like that chat thing,
as they did,
and
it being even it was colorable.
Now,
in fact,
this is
why can't
this is what happens.
Okay,
first let's identify.
Okay,
in law, that's insurrection.
Right.
They can be killed because it's not law. Let's be clear.
Okay. But they weren't.
Now,
I mean,
that's not condemning their intent. That's not condemning their intent. I'm condemning those who backed that up, who funded that.
Okay.
Their intent. The people are being used. Remember, the people generally are pawns.
Right.
There will be sacrifice, but the agenda is not what they think it is. Now, let's look at this. The implication is that they're separating themselves from the United States corporation company, right? That's the implied surface intent, right? Right? Now, what's been going on and what needs to be done? Rather than remove the culprit from office, they start destroying their own community, which is totally incorrect. Now they can be attacked. You see the point? When the issue is they should have been enforcing the Constitution and removing these people from office. And not with a vote either. It's like Thomas Jefferson said. What did Thomas Jefferson warn these people of? Also, Georgie warned them of these things. The same thing. They said, George Washington said to one woman who questioned the operation at that time, and he mentioned to the woman, he said, "Madam, you now have a republic if you're willing to keep it." Thomas Jefferson said, whenever these politicians start violating constitutional principles and make a career out of the offices of government, the wise among you will drag them literally out of the offices, line them against the fence, and shoot them. That's Thomas Jefferson, the so-called founding father, the plenipotentiary under treaty. Now, how many people talk that instead of talking that, instead of putting themselves in harm's way, taking over, being led into insurrection because they're being trapped. See, they're being trapped. What they should have been doing is enforcing the Constitution. You see, you don't need to take, if you want to take the country back, number one, you got to identify who are the people of the country and who are the people of the corporation. Because now you got a mixed breed here of confusion, of claimants that have no claim, that are actually inciting what? Insurrection under the guise of trying to be constitutional. You better study this stuff very carefully because you're being set up. They are being set up, and it's really shameful, and it's really upsetting because you know who's going to get blamed for all this? our people in their communities. And guess whose communities are destroyed? It ain't suburbia. It ain't the corporations. It's your daggone communities and the stores, half of them, which is the last breed or the last tail ends of the stores that some of your own people have. Duh.
Question, Foxy Bill. If they decide to start forced vaccines under public safety, will that suspend all Constitution rights? And
well, they've been suspending them in the first place.
And I guess, will it be forced jurisdiction?
They've already forced jurisdiction. That's what is going on in the first place. That's what all this stuff is happening. The de facto operations, let's look at this. Organic Act of Congress, 1871. By law, I challenge any politician operating on the land at North America to come forth and tell the people the truth about the Organic Act of Congress 1871, and then tell the people that they are lawful constitutional officers. And they won't do it because if they did, they'd be lying. So now you got a bunch of criminals running everything, pretending to be government and doing things to you, and then charging you for it. That's what's going on. That's actually what's going on. There's no reason I chose this subject. And it's being enforced by the gangs of New York under the guise of law. And the diversion of it all is race argument that removes you off of the international law of protections of treaties and constitutions, which is what your conversation should be about, and decolonization. Let's give another example so that people can kind of look at this more rationally. These same people here, these congressmen and senators who are sons and daughters, mostly, of congressmen and congresswomen who superseded them in those locked-in family jobs of de facto government, were raping little boys and girls under their usual doctrine of discovery in Isabela, in Cuba, etc. Now, for some of you who have a little bit of history, and I'm not defending Fidel Castro because he's part of the game too, to some degree. However, Fidel Castro nationalized Cuba and told those Paleolithic Europeans to take their butts and get off the island. That's called nationalization. Well, guess what you got to do with these colonists here who have been pretending to be Americans and they're not? You got to tell the real history so the people can get their heads clear and start decolonizing. You got to nationalize in order to protect the people. If you're talking anything else realistically, you're not trying to solve the problem. And I know that this thing is monstrously big. I know it's monstrously entrenched. However, that's the cure. If you don't want the cure, don't talk about the cure. If you want this confusion to keep on going on, you keep this mess up. Not only that, they're going to be killing you off anyway so that you can't fight back anyway. Because that's what they've been doing. And I don't know what it takes to make these people recognize that these people are waging war on you. And it ain't China and it ain't Russia. It's these people here, fake hybrid Europeans claiming to be Americans who are not Americans, enforced by the military operations of the gangs of New York called Fraternal Order of Police. Now that's the truth. Get over it. I know it's hard, but if we're really going to be honest and start trying to solve problems here on this land, this is the subject matter, and you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to face this monster. You have to face this Goliath and do whatever is necessary. Go into your divine mind, the divine mind of your ancestors. Bring up the best that you got, put the best men and women forth with the best minds and come together, enforcing international law and constitutions and treaties, even though they ain't been acting right on those platforms either. But that's the platforms that you should be talking about. And the major subject should be decolonization. And if you're not talking decolonization, you're not trying to solve the problem, because your problem is occupational colonization. That's what it is. Get over it. and the genocide will continue until you decolonize the land. And the universal international term for decolonization is called nationalization. And so now you got to identify the true Americans and distinguish them from the fake corporate Americans who've been pretending to be Americans and raping the people in the land and killing them off. That's what's been going on. You don't need to march. You need to enforce the law.
Thanks.
You already know what happened to, like I talk to him very often. He calls me every once in a while, Most Def as an example, right? Most Def, you already know he's a bae. You already know Wesley Snipes is conscious. You know Michael Jackson got conscious. You know Janet is conscious. I think Jermaine is. I haven't talked to him, but I talked to Mike and I talked to Jan indirectly, but I talked to Q for Mike on a regular basis for years. And this has much to do when he started finding out what was going on, even with the fake contracts, and then he started calling them fake Jews devils, and of course you already know what they did to him. And that wasn't an accident. Don't think it ever was. Same thing with Prince when he got back control of his music, and as a matter of fact, he started dropping some of the history and telling the people, and y'all can do some of this research, when he started dropping little keys talking about, guess what, George Washington really wasn't the first president. He was the ninth. They already knew that he was conscious. They already knew he knew what was up. And all of a sudden, then they made sure he couldn't even use his own name. Then he started finding out about contract law. Or then in order for his career not to be totally destroyed, he had to do private contracts where he sold some of his music, I think, through Best Buy or a few other places, and other places couldn't sell his music, etc., because they was robbing him to death. And then Whitney, she would start getting control of her music. All of a sudden, she drowned. Then a few other people found out what was up. Then they drowned their daughter. These people,
Mariah Carey,
same thing. Mariah, is conscious, yeah. And Nick Cannon's conscious. Yeah. They try to screw them too. You know what I mean? But Nick is kind of he's more grounded. He knows more. Even though he considers himself a student, Nick is really on it. He understands it. He already knows that it's a game, and he's willing to tell if you get the point. But for the most part, Stevie Wonder's conscious. A lot of them is conscious. My friend, Nate used to live, as a matter of fact, his family lived around from my family. James Ingram, conscious. Peebo Bryson is conscious. A lot of them is conscious. But you already know how our people are thinking that they're Constantinians. The first thing is, you don't believe in Jason's sandwiches and stuff. And they start that stuff because they really following Rome under the guise of Jesus. You got to understand, our people ain't necessarily the nicest people in the world either. Right. You want to find some perfected hypocrites, it's among our own. So they've been dangerous to our own. As an example, even with Marcus Garvey, when he was talking about international trade with Africa, right? They started lying on him and saying that he's talking about taking our people from here, going to that side of Africa, when he's talking about Pan-African trade, etc. And as a matter of fact, the photographer, his right-hand man was actually a CIA man. Same thing operating with 32-degree Mason, what's his name? Martin Luther King. His right-hand man was CIA man. His photographer. Stop. Everybody knows what this is. As soon as them French Muslim school Malcolm, that the Maghreb was actually the land, not Evening Salat. If you left home, don't come in with this black and white language, that's slave language. Of course, you already know when he wouldn't take the payoff, the good brothers helped the hybrid Europeans do to their good brother, Malik. Yeah, please. So you knew the answer when you asked that question.
Here's another question. Michelle Davis says, Grand Sheik Taj, we have the MSTA, NFAC, RPG, and the NOI. Where is our common ground to begin operations?
Now, that is called Constitution and treaty operations. Now, for those of you who will do the research on the NOI, you'll recognize that every once in a while, Farrakhan will throw a seed out there to the people and tell them that they're Moors. He's giving signals, but we've got to start reaching out to each other and organizing. The key is we got to go back to Constitution and treaty operations. And we've got to stop the factionalism and stop looking at, the concepts of religion from their anthropomorphic view and take them back to their Sabian or Saba foundation from which all of it comes, and that will cause or bring the unity as far as philosophy is concerned. And as a matter of fact,